We hear that so often. Run after your passion, follow your bliss. You do not get to set the pathways of your life and the circumstances that you will inhabit, and neither do I. There is a race that has been set before me, and it involves my body and my genes and my family and other people around me and this world in which I live. There is a race that has been set before me. I didn't ask for the circumstances of my life. Here they are. Now, will I run it with perseverance or not? We are the fellowship of the withered hand, and change is coming today. You will change today, and I say that not in a glib way or in a motivational way from a human standpoint. It's just simply the truth, and our great hope is that God is walking with us and will help us to change into the people that He wants us to be in, that matters. I was walking with a friend quite recently, maybe the toughest person I know, with a spirit that enables a life to continue to go on in the face of very strange suffering that is deeply, deeply unfair. And the thought that I had just following that body was the power of persevering one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time, to keep going when there are not answers and there's not clarity and there's not an obvious solution to problems that come, and to keep going and to keep studying and persevere. So what we're talking today is about perseverance. Robert Roberts, a philosopher, and he writes that it's similar to, but a bit different from, courage, which we've looked at. That's when you're willing to look directly at what you're most afraid of and keep going. You have a fighting spirit. It's a little different than patience. Patience is when you bear with grace in a difficult situation that will simply take time. You're in a traffic jam or long line at Starbucks or something like that. Perseverance flows out of a deep sense that there is a meaning to the struggle. Many years ago now, I took one of my children to the most creative presentation of Shakespeare's play Hamlet. It actually took place on Alcatraz Island. It was brilliantly done. It started on the ferry while we were on the way over to Alcatraz. We had no idea that was going to happen, but the play actually begins on the ferry. And then there were maybe 100 of us or so who were in the audience. And we would actually walk from one spot to another spot on Alcatraz, and then the next scene would unfold, and the next scene would unfold. So there's a place where Hamlet's murdered father's ghost is up in the guard tower shouting down. Another lonely, lonely spot where his murderous uncle comes out and gives that speech, "My offense is rank before heaven." We were on the backside of the island, all darkness and fog. It was night by now, and you could hear the lonely, lonely sound of those bells from the buoys out in the harbor. In this crumbling, deteriorating cell, when Hamlet begins the most famous speech, "To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it's nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take up arms against them and by opposing to end them." In other words, is it worth it, this life? Is it worth all the pain and all the struggle? Is there a reason why I'm here? And at that moment, a cell phone rang. And I thought, this is brilliant. This also is part of this very creative play. And somebody is calling with an answer to the greatest question in all of Shakespeare. And then the phone rang a second time, and the next thought that came was, it's my phone. And there is no answer. I don't have that answer to give. But perseverance is about something more than just finding the resources within myself. Do I keep going? It is there a reason? Is there a hope? Is there a meaning to what we're doing? Robert Roberts, who's a Christian philosopher, when he writes in his book, The Strengths of a Christian, about perseverance, says that perseverance requires foresight. You have to be able to imagine a future. A little child can't persevere. It's part of why little kids can't get married. Kierkegaard talked about what a monstrous thought that was. among other reasons, because the child is not able to make a commitment and persevere with it. You have to be able to imagine what might the future look like. A kid will say at McDonald's, I want the Happy Meal, and if you give me that, I'll be happy the rest of my life. It's all I ever want. And it struck me when I was thinking about that. I've had moments like that where out of great emotion, I'll cry, God, if you can just give an answer to this problem, if you can just remedy this suffering, it's all I would ever, but of course, there'll be another problem tomorrow. So perseverance requires the ability to imagine, see into the future. It also requires what Roberts calls a moral passion. I have to see the goodness of being the kind of person who can honor the commitment that I makes. Bertrand Russell, the very famous atheist philosopher, writes about one time when he was out riding a bicycle and he realized while he was riding he no longer loved Alice, his wife. And so that was the end of their marriage. But he writes about it as though he had no responsibility for maintaining love, or as though it was just something like a cold that comes or goes. And a person who perseveres recognizes the beauty, has a moral passion around being the kind of person that is able to honor commitments. And then Robert says also perseverance requires a strength of will. That weak-willed people who just live on the basis of one impulse or another. Samson in the Bible he's like a walking impulse disorder poster boy. And where there has not been the cultivation of strength of will, it's impossible to persevere. So somebody asked Abba Anthony one time, lots of wisdom from the Desert Fathers back many, many centuries ago. They asked Abba Anthony, if you want to please God, what do I need to do? And he said 3 things. First, whoever you are, always keep God before your eyes. Second, whatever you do, always live according to the guidance or teaching of Scripture. Third, wherever you live, do not easily leave. Do not easily leave. In this relationship, in this friendship, in this place, in this community, at this church, in this committed relationship. Doesn't say that leaving is never a possibility, but that's advice that we don't hear much these days. Cultivate the ability of what might be called stick-to-itiveness. One of the great passages in all of the Bible on this is in Hebrews chapter 12. The writer has been writing about others who have lived with great faith, who have persevered through an enormous problem. Sometimes it's helpful to me to remember I'm not the only person in the world with a problem, and other people have suffered much, much, much worse ways, and they keep going, and it helps me to think about that. Therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out before us. Let us run with perseverance. Run with perseverance. And then it's so interesting. Not the race that you choose to run. We hear that so often. Run after your passion, follow your bliss. You do not get to set the pathways of your life and the circumstances that you will inhabit, and neither do I. There is a race that has been set before me, and it involves my body and my genes and my family and other people around me and this world in which I live. There is a race that has been set before me. I didn't ask for the circumstances of my life. Here they are. Now, will I run it with perseverance or not? How do I do it? Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. So take a moment right now and consider the great cloud of witnesses, somebody from your past, who inspires you with the ability to persevere. When I was going through this book, I found this old index card. It's quite yellowed, And it has a note on there to call two people, both of whom are named John. This is from more than 30 years ago, and I was thinking about going to work at a church back in Chicago, and both of these guys worked there. And one of them was a friend named John Wallace. And I thought, I haven't looked at this card, I suppose, now for 30 years. And John is no longer with us in this life. He is a part of that great cloud of witnesses. And I thought about the path that he endured, the difficulties and the struggles that he had to face in his physical life as he battled against the illness that eventually took him, and other kind of challenges that he had to face. And I thought, no, my friend John can do that. I can keep going one step at a time. I keep my eyes on those people who keep moving one step at a time, one day at a time when it's difficulty. And above all, our friend Jesus, who did that and was resurrected, and there is the hope. Wherever you are, don't easily leave. Stick to it. Change is coming. I'm so grateful to be a part of you. You know, I was just talking to Tim today. We just sent out today invitation for people to ask other folks that are part of our community to pray. And over 200 people almost immediately have already sent in prayer requests. And you are part of that cloud of witnesses for me. You are part of what reminds me it is worth it to keep going one step at a time. We do it together because we're the fellowship of the withered hand. I love you. Change is coming today.
Hey, I'm Tim. Thanks for joining us. Before you leave, you can subscribe to this channel or like this video or comment on the video. We love to read those comments. We read them every day, so we'd love to hear from you there. If you'd like to receive the emails that go along with each video, you can let us know at becomenew.com/subscribe. Or if you have a prayer request, we would love to pray for you. You can text that request to 855-888-0444. See you next time.